This Fremen religious adaptation, then, is the source of what we now recognize as the pillars of the universe, whose Quizara Tafwid are among us with the signs and proofs and prophecy. They bring us the Liet-Kynes mystical fusion whose profound beauty is typified by the stirring music built on the old forms, but stamped with the new awakening. Who has not heard and been deeply moved by the old man's hymn? I drove my feet through a desert, whose mirage fluttered like a host, ferocious for glory, greedy for danger. I roamed the horizons of Al-Kulab, watching time level mountains, in its search and its hunger for me. And I saw the sparrows swiftly approach, bolder than an on-rushing wolf. They spread in the tree of my youth. I heard the flock in my branches, and was caught in their beaks and claws. From Arrakis Awakening by the Princess Irulan.
Welcome to Reading Dune, a podcast where we read Dune by Frank Herbert and talk about it. If you're a Fremen or a first-time reader, this podcast is for you. My name is Caleb Balls.
And I'm Evan Diaz.
Together, we're going to read some Dune.
Yeah, we are.
See, if you're watching us right now, we're switched our names anyway. Oh, they're not popping up. Never mind. I just wanted to do the intro.
I think you did a great job.
Time. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you should definitely tweet at us at Reading Dune if you think Evan should always do the intro. I think you nailed it.
I'll try to do it without giggling next time.
You were so excited. You were so excited.
It's exciting.
All right. So, yes, we are. We're going to read some Dune today.
Yeah. And we're in the same place, physically in the same place. For those that can see, I'm messing with Caleb's face again.
Yeah. And if you want to see us, you can see us on YouTube at Reading Dune.
Yes.
Subscribe. It would be nice. We're kind of building a little fun community here.
Yeah, we are.
Especially on Twitter as well. So, yeah, we have a lot going on this chapter. So we're just going to dive in real fast.
Let's do it.
First, I want to hit with the quote. Evan, you got your book out yet?
Oh, dude, where's my book?
Evan gets up, runs to his book, runs back, and his arm's kind of waving back and forth. It's really awkward. But he opens it up.
Story of my life.
What did you think of this quote?
I thought there was a lot in there. I have no idea what it is. The words are English words.
Some of them, yes.
They come together in a semi-conventional sense.
Like a sentence?
Right.
Yeah.
And they are phrases. I have no idea. I have no idea what's happening.
No, but what you're feeling is, I think, pretty standard the first time you read this.
Okay, cool.
It's like, what? Especially when a lot of these quotes are like, what is happening?
Right.
So we're just kind of going to break it down, right? This is Princess Irulan is talking about this moment that Arrakis becomes spiritually awake.
Whoa. Okay. Cool.
And it's actually the moment we're in right now.
Oh.
So what's happening in Dune, what we're reading, is the moment she's talking about.
Wait. Like this chapter.
This
or
book,
this time.
This epic
general. Okay.
This epic that's happening.
Okay.
This story that's taking place.
Sweet.
Is the awakening of Arrakis. And this kind of there's a lot that's in this, but there's talks about the Fremen religious adaptation, which we now know is the pillars of the universe, whose Quizara Tafwid, which basically is their evangelists.
Quizara Tafwid.
Yeah, they're evangelists, they're crusaders, they're prophets and priests.
Okay, I was thinking it might be like an angelic type thing because it's like they're all around us. But that makes more sense, logically.
They are in charge of spreading the religion.
Okay, cool. I'm for it.
Yeah. And they would spread the pillars of the universe. Among us are all the signs and proofs and prophecy. And what's going to happen is, remember the OC Bible?
Yeah.
And how the OC Bible was written as they took all the religions and from all the planets and kind of put them all together and tried to make one religion.
Yeah.
And so they kind of stamped new things and old things. This is what's happening with the Fremen religion.
Okay.
What's going to happen in the future is that the Fremen religious stuff that's happening on Arrakis is going to get stamped onto the entire universe.
Okay.
So songs that we would know of, say, religious songs, are going to have a Fremen twist to them now at the end.
Like everywhere?
Everywhere.
Ooh, sweet. Okay.
So this, it's this new music stamped on old forms with this new awakening, this new flavor that's hit the universe. Who has not heard and been deeply moved by the old man's hymn? So I was going to take this line by line because I find it interesting.
Okay.
I drove my feet through the desert, whose mirage fluttered like a host. That kind of reminds me of what's happening in this chapter right now.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yeah.
All right. Voracious for glory, greedy for danger. Who in the story has been greedy for danger, ferocious for glory?
Paul?
I was thinking more the Duke Leto.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You're
diving in head first, not knowing how big
right.
he's in this thing, right?
I forgot about Leto, which is sad.
Too soon. He only died a few chapters ago. I roamed the horizons of Al-Kulab. That's just a place on Dune. I had to look it up.
Okay.
Watching time level mountains. Where have we seen that? Evan puts his hand to his head and thinks.
Man.
Remember Paul's mental breakdown? And how he saw time rolled out in front of him?
Yes. Okay.
With mountains and valleys.
It's all coming back.
All right. It's been a while since we've recorded one.
Right. With the magic of podcasting, we just talked about this, but it's a while.
You only read one chapter at a time.
Right.
So there's a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
I saw the sparrows swiftly approach. That kind of reminds me of this chapter.
Yeah, that's something similar. A similar bird shows up in this chapter.
Yeah. Bolder than an onrushing wolf. This is definitely a spoiler, but it's not till book 4. So you're going to completely forget about it when we get to that point. But the book opens with a girl running from onrushing wolves.
What, a book 4 in here?
Yeah. Book like a...
the physical book, like the next book.
Right, in God Emperor of Dune, the 4th installment in the series.
Gotcha.
The book opens with an onrushing wolf.
Okay.
Which I just find interesting that, like, I don't know how far Frank had it planned out, but some of these metaphors and images pop up a lot. It's kind of nice to see that. They spread in the tree of my youth. I heard the flock in my branches. I think he just talked about the only trees he would have seen would be on Caladan.
Right.
So I think this song is talking about Paul. He is the old man.
Ooh.
And was caught in their beaks and claws. I know we read this like 2 weeks ago because of Christmas and New Year's and whatnot. But do you remember what got caught in beaks and claws in the last chapter? So they go up. Evan flips back like 2 pages.
Just narrating every physical thing that I'm doing.
Well, not everyone can watch us on YouTube. They're listening. There's a certain creature that gets caught in a beak and a claw. When he comes, Paul and Jessica come into the paradise, the fairy world.
The rat, the little Muad'Dib.
The Muad'Dib gets caught in the beaks and claws. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. Well,
there's
that.
Boom. Yeah. I just wanted. I don't know much more about this, but I want to go through line by line almost with that song because I think there's a lot happening in there.
Right. And like I said, when I read it tonight, like before you got here, I was like, okay, Caleb's gonna ask me about this quote and what am I seeing? And I'm seeing nothing. But now it's like every line has something in it, like every little piece of it.
Yeah, we're referring back to it and what's happening. Yeah, there's this experience that's happening on the planet. We are smack dab in the middle of it.
Jeez.
But of course, that we don't talk about that experience in this chapter.
Right.
Who's this chapter about, Evan?
It's about Hines, who shows up as a disgruntled, naked man with a cloak on and nothing else.
That's it.
Kind of flumping through the desert. I don't know if flumping is a word, but
It is now. So yeah, scene open. It's like noonday, right? Sun is out, and you see a man crawl across a dune top. Right? He's dressed only in the remnants of his Juba cloak. And this man is Kynes. He falls, pushes some stuff up, and he pronounces his name. What's his name? He says it.
I am Liet-Kynes.
I'm Liet-Kynes. Have we ever heard him addressed like that before?
We've heard him called Liet. We've heard him called Kynes, but we have not heard him called Liet-Kynes.
Yes. Who calls him Kynes?
All the Imperial people, the Atreides, the Sardaukar, the Harkonnens, all of them.
Who calls him Liet?
The Fremen.
The Fremen, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no one, and even Hallett was like, who is this Liet? He serves two masters. Could be a deity. And we now know he is Liet-Kynes, both Fremen and Imperial.
Wow. I did not get that from
just that one little reference.
That's really good.
He says, I am the Imperial Majesty's planetologist, the planetary ecologist for Arrakis. I am steward of this land.
I'm steward of this land.
He stumbles and falls sideways down the sand. His hands dig into the sand. I am steward of this sand. Where did we last leave off with Kynes? Do you remember?
The bunker thing, right? When the Harkonnens or Sardaukar or whoever came in, they killed Duncan, Idaho, right?
Yeah.
And Kynes sends them down a secret passageway to escape, and that's when they get in the Thopter and the storm and all that stuff.
Right, they part ways. Liet says he's going to go and disappear, and so he's not going to know where Paul is, and he tells Paul, like, my people will find you, and then he disappears.
Right.
We know in the next chapter, in the Harkonnen chapter, that he's been captured by the Harkonnens.
Mm-hmm.
Nefud says that we have Liet and we have Hawat.
Right.
And the Baron says, oh, but both of them are by the Sardaukar. We have to get them way out of Sardaukar hands.
Right.
So the Baron's like, just tell them we need to play them off each other and they will have accidents.
Right. So this whole thing is Kynes' accident.
This is Kynes' accident. So Nefud somehow did his job, got both of them away, probably beat up Kynes, and left him out in the desert.
Yeah, because he's bleeding, right? So
yes.
That he's bleeding.
And he has no still suit on.
Right. So
it's only a matter of time before something happens to him. Either a worm gets him or he's killed by the planet himself. And he knows that he's close to his end.
Right.
And he knows he's also going delirious.
Yeah.
This is the very end of everything, but he knows deep down, he knows what he should be doing. Even all of this crap is happening to him. Like, the first step is you should dig down into the slip face, into the shadow face of the dune, and stay in the shade so the sun doesn't take any more of your water.
Yeah. He was saying he needs to, like, bury himself
right
just under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a problem.
What's the problem?
Problem is, and I'm still fully trying to understand it, there's a pre-spice pocket.
Yeah, there's a pre-spice mass under him.
Yeah, which means basically it's like a big bubble, like deep in the sand. And this is they explain this later in the chapter, but like there's a bubble, and when it pops, there's suddenly like unoccupied space, and so all of the sand is gonna like rush down. All the sand that's above it is gonna rush down and make kind of like a maelstrom of sand that like sucks everything up.
And then it's gonna explode.
Okay, so it like actually blows up. Like incendiary, like explosion.
Like nuclear bomb, boom.
Oh shoot. Okay.
Like goes off.
I thought I thought from reading it was just like there's a bubble and it pops and the sand goes down and everything that's on the sand goes down with it. I didn't think it was like
and then something bursts up and that's what kills Kynes at the end. Spoiler till the end of the chapter. But you should see this coming. That it's kind of in the title. This is the death of Kynes.
Plus, like, if you're listening to the podcast and then reading the chapter, that's a little strange.
We agree. You should go back to the beginning and listen to us afterwards.
Right.
Yes. All right. So he has to leave, get out of the way from the priest pious mask, because otherwise he will die. And then all of a sudden, a subconscious thought hits his brain. Super clear. The planet is in its landscape. How we take part in that basic source of civilization, agriculture. I have it on the screen here if you need it.
I need a pencil.
You need to underline it?
My stuff, yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by pencils. When you need to underline it in a book, we suggest you do so. I'm also a huge fan of underlining. And then also giving your other books to people with your underlined notes in them.
Oh, so cool. It's like some kind of weird coded message and you feel like
it's like you're reading a book with people.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like what the podcast is like. I feel like I'm reading a book along with all of you. And if you have a favorite moment in Dune or completely disagree with us, as I see some people in the comment they're doing, they just want to know how Liet, what they thought, they didn't like my interpretation of Liet seeking glory. So ferocious for glory, greedy for danger. I'm kind of referencing how Leto, like his dad, got into the ring with the bull.
Yeah.
Wanting to prove that he could do this, getting it over his head. Even Jessica knew that there was there was nothing for the father.
Right.
There was nothing he could do for it, but he still went for it.
Right.
Because he needed that rush to say that, hey, no matter what the cost is, I can do it. I mean, the Baron also has that same inkling. Yeah. Ferocious for glory, needing to know and be the best.
Yeah, I guess it could be a lot of people.
Even the Emperor.
It could be the Emperor. Yeah. Exactly. It could be several of them.
Definitely Kynes too. When is going too far going to kill you?
Right. In this chapter.
And Kynes does, Kynes does something that ends up killing him.
Yeah.
And his father, which we'll get into, definitely lets him know that.
Yeah, all right. I have to get freaky with Kynes' dad over here.
All right. So the real wealth of a planet is in its landscape. How we take part in the basic source of civilization, agriculture. So in order to have a civilization, people mass together, you have to have a way to get food.
Right.
You have to have a way to sustain those people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the wealth of the planet is. How can you sustain the human race and your people group with the natural resources given on the planet?
Yeah.
And then Kynes goes, he thinks how strange it is that even in this dying moment, his mind is on a one track.
Yes.
And it won't get off. He's been programmed to do this, to think like this, and he can't stop it.
That's it.
The Harkonnen troops had left him out here, thinking the worm might get him if the desert didn't. They thought it was amusing to leave him alive to die in inches from the impersonal hands of his planet. But Kynes says it's not easy to kill a Fremen. It's not.
True.
We don't die easy. And then the thought, again, boom. The highest function of ecology is understanding consequences. Okay, Evan, what is ecology?
Oh, you're asking me all the questions that make me feel stupid.
Well, I mean, if you're feeling stupid, other people are feeling stupid because you're pretty smart.
I am the base of stupidity for this podcast. Ecology, the study of the world, ecosystem, like studying the ecos. I wish I could have just like had a encyclopedic understanding of like Latin and Greek, and I could just tell you what the etymology of the word. But yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's the study of ecosystems and how things work together in that interplay. So you nailed it. So it's basically going to say that in order for, because the Araxis is going to have a planetary ecologist. There could be planetary ecologists for other planets as well, but their job is to study the planet and make it habitable for humans.
Yeah,
they're trying to study the chemical, biological interplay, everything that works together in their favor.
Right.
Kynes understands who this voice is that's saying these things. It's the voice of his father, the ecologist before him, Pardot Kynes, his daddy. He wants to turn to see his father, and as he's laying in the sand, he turns his head to the left and tries to see it, and the sand grates his face. And he doesn't see anything because his father's been dead.
Right.
For a very long time.
Right.
And this is where he hears his dad's voice again. Got yourself in quite a fix here, son. You should have known the consequences of trying to help that child of that Duke. Kynes, I'm delirious.
I'm delirious.
Right.
I'm making this up.
What choice did Kynes make?
To protect Paul. To like keep Paul safe.
Yeah.
Because he saw a glimpse of his.
It's been a while, man. It's okay.
That's a big word. I don't remember how to say it.
All right. What was the other choice he could have made? He could help Paul or
totally screw him.
Right.
Like kill him, have him killed, turn him into the Harkonnens.
Because the Fremen would have continued with or without Paul.
Right. It would have been the easier choice.
Mm-hmm. And what's Kynes' ultimate goal? What's Pardot's ultimate goal?
The like terraforming or like renewal of Arrakis,
right?
To turn it into a paradise.
Yes. So that's where Pardot is saying, well, everything has consequences, and the consequences of you and Paul is you dying. You could have not done this. You know this.
Right.
So the voice first came from the left, now it came from the right. Kynes scraped his face through the sand to go to the other direction, but nothing there. He's definitely losing it. Kynes, or Pardot's voice again. The more life in a system, the more the more life in a system, the more niches there are for life.
That was a good one. I wanted to underline that too. The more life in a system, the more niches there are for life. It's like the more life there is somewhere, the more life finds a way.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it's a barren place, it's harder for life to pop up. But if you have different forms of life in a place, it's easier for life to find a way into that system.
Right. Even in a barren place, if life is introduced, then that life will add an element into this system that allows more, a more like
more nutrients.
Habitable it turns this barren place into a place that can sustain life.
It's almost like life itself creates more life.
Yeah.
No matter where it is and what it looks like.
Right.
Then we get a definition for life right afterwards. Pardot says, life improves the capacity of the environment to sustain life. Life makes needed nutrients more readily available. It binds more energy into the system through tremendous chemical interplay from organism to organism. So, for instance, when you, Evan, eat, say, a carrot, right? You're getting energy from the carrot that it got from where?
The ground and the sun. And
right. Yeah. So the nutrients that it collected from the sun, you are then also using in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then it leaves you and then goes and gets used by, say, earthworms,
right,
or other insects that would eat what you have. And then the earthworms then get eaten by something else. So it's like life never leaves that system.
Right.
So
the energy just
always
keeps cycling. Yeah.
This is where Kynes asks himself, why does he keep harping on the same subject? I knew this one before I was 10. And right then, he looks up and sees some desert hawks that begin to circle over him.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Well, what are the hawks looking for?
Dead stuff to eat?
Well, let's just say the water that's in him,
Right.
they would take that so they could live.
Right.
So the system continues. The voice in his head continues. We're generalists. You can't draw neat lines around planet-wide problems. Planetology is a cut and fit science. What do you got?
What do I got?
Yeah.
He's like, Kynes is like getting more and more annoyed with the ghost of his father lecturing at him right now. It's like that was something that I thought was really funny throughout the whole chapter. And here's where it starts like getting exponentially worse. Like, what's he trying to tell me? What's the consequence I failed to see? What's the consequence that I missed? And he's like, he's not to the point where he's like, shut up, but he's
getting there for sure.
To get annoyed.
Part on it is basically saying, being an ecologist, trying to do this thing, it's not like we just get water, it will all fix the problem.
Right.
You have to get water and something else and something else. And once you get something, it's going to have unnecessary or unthought of consequences that you're going to deal with later. It's like when you're trying to solve political things and you think, oh, if we just did this one thing, it would fix everything.
It's like, no, that one thing, if you did that, here's the list of problems that would happen. So you have to find something that's going to address several things at the same time.
You got to be a generalist about this. His Kynes' cheek slumped back into the hot sand. He could smell the pre-spice gases. He thinks back about what this could all mean. What did he miss? He thinks, well, there are birds up there. Maybe the Fremen will see him. And maybe he'll get rescued. And then the voice in his head pops up again. To the working planetologist, this is the most important tool is human beings. You must cultivate ecological literacy in the people. This is why I've created this entirely new form of ecological notion. You can feel at this point, Pardot, Liet-Kynes' dad, just legit lecturing like he would to his son or to a group of people. He's teaching in this moment. So what's the point he's trying to make?
That humans are the thing that's going to make the biggest difference. You got to use humans as like a tool to create the environment that you're trying to create.
Right. If you need to get everybody on board.
Right.
Which, and this won't necessarily be spoilers either, but when we get to the Fremen CH, Pardot Kynes created the entire educational system. So he's teaching all of the Fremen how to do all of this and the science behind all of it.
Gotcha.
Because he knows that like once he's gone, it's going to take more than one lifetime.
Right.
To do all of this. So we have to like instill it into the people. Use the people. They're your biggest resource.
Right. And it seems like he's not only teaching them how to do this thing, he's teaching them to live in a way that's going to further the development of this system that he's creating.
Correct.
So like they don't even know that they are like that they're that life that's being implanted into a barren system to create more life.
Right. The Fremen are life itself. Like as a human being, you are life in a system.
Right.
And your job is to create more life.
Right.
And I don't think they understand the bigness of that scale. They're just following orders.
Yeah, which is seemingly what he wants. It's like, if you guys keep doing things this way, it's gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, we'll just keep doing.
Yes. Kynes' body starts to feel cold. But he knows this isn't actually happening. It's his body overheating. And without a still suit, he won't last much longer. Though, then we get Pardot's goals. The first goal on Arrakis is grasslands. We start with poverty grass, and then move into upland forests, then a few bodies of open water, small at first, always with wind traps. On this planet, we'll never get away from wind traps. So this is the first thing we have to, because when Paul and Jessica looked out on the dunes, they could see grasses popped up, but they didn't know if they were mirages, was the eyes playing tricks on them. But no, there are actually little grasses out there.
Yeah.
So if you can get enough of those formed, you can start to pull back the dunes. Remember, Frank Herbert started all of this watching the dunes in Oregon and them trying to get rid of them by putting these poverty grasses in there.
Yeah.
Grasses that needed the smallest amount of water.
Right.
So this is the plan for Pardot. Let's get the grasses first, and then we can start with some forests. And then you could possibly, at that point, get some water and like put a lake together on the surface. Small at first, but you'll never get away from using wind traps.
Right.
So this is how you would terraform the planet over time. And then Kynes just thinks again, always lecturing me. Why doesn't he shut up? I'm dying.
Can't he see I'm dying? Hey, I'm trying to die over here. Get out of here.
Why? It just makes me think of, obviously Kynes' relationship with his dad, but Frank's relationship with his own father.
Man, that's I wouldn't have thought of that. That's
when this relationship is probably. I mean, we have Paul's relationship with his dad to kind of almost juxtapose, but you have Pardot Kynes and Liet-Kynes. Pardot was on a mission.
Yeah,
he was sent to Arrakis and found his way into the Fremen because he was stuck on this idea of like, it doesn't have to be this way. Right. Humans can live here if this is what we need to do in the system to tip it in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, so was Leto.
Yeah,
Leto had the same basically the same aspiration. He was coming from a more political perspective. Right. So maybe both of them say something about Frank's dad. You know, maybe I don't know anything about.
I don't know anything either. Yeah,
but maybe he had some kind of obsession, some kind of thing that he was trying to make happen, and these are different facets of Frank's experience.
We know Frank had an obsession.
Yeah,
well, I mean, being a writer, he worked as a journalist off and on, making ends meet, but his wife was definitely the breadwinner until this took off he was in his 50s or 60s by this point. So there's definitely that, like, I will do everything I can to make it.
Yeah.
Until I make it. I think that's almost the same kind of thought.
Maybe this like greed for glory, or
maybe there's something in there for that. So yeah, Kynes thinks to himself, why doesn't he shut up? Can't he see him dying? And bam, right in his head again. And you will die too if you don't get off this bubble that's forming right deep beneath you. And there, you know it. You smell the pre-spice gases. You know the little makers beginning to lose some of their water into the mass. All right, little makers. What do you got?
Nothing, dude.
Nothing? What's a maker?
Okay. I
use your context clues.
I have no actual idea from reading, just like on the surface, because I read these chapters pretty quickly before we do these podcasts. It's like worms. Are they the worms? Are they like little tiny worms? Are they something else completely?
The little worms.
They're little worms?
Well, I mean, what's a maker?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know.
All right, we'll go. We won't get into it here. We'll do the chapter and then we'll dive into it.
Dang it. Okay.
And maybe you'll figure it out along the way as we keep going on.
Okay.
Kynes pushes himself up to his knees and he hears bird screech. Then the voice in his head pops up again. We must do a thing never done before. We must use man to be a constructive ecological force, with a plant here and an animal there, a man there, to transform the water cycle. And looking into the water cycle was the first clue between the relationship between the worm and the spice.
Right.
What do you got?
Dude, nothing, dude.
Okay.
I feel like I'm missing. I'm like, there's something in there that I missed, and now I'm like too far gone, and I like won't be able to figure it out.
No, we're just going to do a quick refresher.
It sounds like I'm being really hard on myself in this episode. I'm really I'm just presently in this moment frustrated at my lack of understanding. I love myself. Okay.
All right. So there's definitely, how do we say this? Frank gives clues along the way without ever saying where it all leads.
Right.
So do you remember the conversation that Yui had with Paul right when they got to Arrakis?
No, that was like a year ago.
Yeah, right. So they were talking about why don't they just drill wells? Right. So Yui was saying that every time they drilled wells, no matter where they drilled, there would be water and then it would be gone.
Right.
No matter where you drilled water, it was all of us. It was there, and then it wasn't.
Right.
Well, what do the little makers surround? What we know now that there's pre-spice mass is there's water underneath us. Right. And that the little makers are there putting something into the water. It's almost like they're attracting the water. So every time you would dig down, a little maker would come and take the water away.
Okay.
So the water would always be taken away. So there's definitely a relationship between the water and spice.
Right.
And the little maker.
Okay.
All right, we're going to get into it. So this is where the first clue is, because Pardot is going to say that ecology is a closed system, right? Because he says he knew about the little makers before he ever saw them, before he ever knew, because there was a gap in the system.
Right.
Where's the water going? What is happening and what's going on with it? He even says how strange it is that people never looked into why there's a near ideal hydrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide balance here with no plant life.
Right.
Right?
That got me like, wait, okay.
Think about it.
The little makers have something to do with that, but that still wasn't enough to give me like over the hump of like what's actually going on.
So on Earth, we need the plants, right? Because plants produce oxygen.
Right.
We breathe oxygen, and then we exhale carbon dioxide. Plants need carbon dioxide, so it's a closed loop.
Yeah.
But on Arrakis, there's no plant life to put off the oxygen that humans breathe. Yet humans on Arrakis breathe perfectly normal.
Right.
So what's providing the oxygen? So there's the gap in the system.
Yeah.
So that's where there's a gap in it, and also there's not quite enough water. So where's the water going, and why is there oxygen in the system? What chemical interplay, exchange, transformation is happening there so humans can survive on this planet? But the problem is humans never looked at this. No one looked at this.
Right.
Because they were all obsessed with the spice.
Right.
What this planet could give them. No one looked up from the spice at all. I mean, spice creates the guild navigators, the Bene Gesserit use it, all of your royalty use it to prolong life. It has extreme benefits. I mean, whoever controls the spice controls the universe. So why would we ever look into what, say, makes the spice or why the planet works? Let's just take the spice and run.
Right. Which is just reckless and like,
oh yeah,
selfish and greedy and
awful.
Mean,
we humans do it on our planet all the time. We just take from our planet
constantly doing it
without ever thinking about what the consequences are to that in our own system, right? Let's just take the oil out of the ground, put it in our cars, and then have the smog go up, to which then warms the planet, to which makes everything harder for life. The system just goes on and on.
Right.
All right. So a hawk that was up in the air lands on the sand near Kynes' outstretched hand, as now Kynes is laying in the dunes. The hawk folds its wings, tips its head to stare at him, basically asking, "Are you dead yet?
You just go ahead and die, please.
Can you die? I'd like it. I'd like the water that you have. It'd be nice." Kynes found the energy to make a noise with the bird. The bird just hopped back and waited. It didn't fly up, just moved back. The hawk then lowered its head and stared into Kynes' hand. Kynes tried to make another noise, but he had no energy to do anything. The hawk again took a hop closer, studying his exposed flesh. And then Ben, right then, another thought from Pardot popped into Kynes' head. Arrakis is a one-crop planet. One crop. It supports a ruling class that lives as the ruling classes have lived in all times, while beneath them a semi-human mass of semi-slaves exist on the leavings. It is the masses and the leavings that occupy our attention. They are far more valuable than has ever been suspected. The masses of Arrakis will know that we work to make the land flow with water. Most of them, of course, will have only a semi-mystical understanding of how we do this.
Right, which is what we were talking about before. He's introducing these concepts to them that are they're doing science. The Kynes fam is doing science, but the Fremen see this like mystical thing that's going on, this like spiritual thing that's going on, or at least that's what they think is going on, right?
Right. What's the crop that Arrakis provides?
Spice.
Boom. What is the ruling class on the planet?
I mean, the whoever is in charge empirically of the planet, like the Fafreluches. And
when I was reading this for the first time, think not human.
Oh, the worms are in charge.
The worms are in charge of the planet.
Yeah.
Everything beneath the worms on the planet are these semi-human, semi-slaves.
Whoa. Okay. I did not see it like that at all.
And so Kynes has to focus on those, on everything underneath the worms' life cycle, and that all the energy they produce, there is excess. There is that little bit of excess, that little bit left over. And Kynes is going to use that little bit of leftover to tip the system in his favor.
Okay. Okay.
You're gonna, once we go into the how the worms happen, this will all make a lot more sense.
Okay.
I hope you're understanding that. And there, Kynes again is just saying how he wants to just shut up. Please. Right? And he's thinking about, a worm. A worm, Kynes thought with a surge of hope. A maker's sure to come when the bubble bursts. So what's a maker?
A worm.
Okay. But I have no hooks. How can I mount a big maker without hooks?
Yeah. Okay. I remember now reading. It's like, okay, a maker's a worm, but I didn't know if little maker made a big enough difference that it was like was it just a small worm, or was it some other creature completely? You know?
I don't know. I call babies little humans, so it's
fair.
And so what do maker hooks do? Remember, because you have maker hooks in your Frem kit.
Right.
So what do you think they do?
Just allow you to ride a worm like a crazy space cowboy?
Yeah, I'm nodding my head in agreement.
Dude, what? That's what I figured, but like that also seemed really crazy and like outlandish while I was reading it, so I didn't know if that's what it meant or not.
This definitely what it means.
So sick.
Right. We were talking about the gap between gap. Science is made up of things that appear obvious after they're explained.
Right.
I knew the little maker was there deep in the sand long before I ever saw it. Stop lecturing me. And then he thinks somebody asked if you cheated, if you actually know what the maker hooks are. No, he got that on his own.
No, I did get that on my own.
Yeah.
against all odds.
And then Kynes thinks, in a minute I'll get up and I'll tell him what I really think of him. Standing there lecturing me when he should be helping me.
My mind just flashed to Ratatouille when Remy is seeing Gusteau, the little chef, and he's like, how can I do that? I am a figment of your imagination. Like, that's what Kynes' dad is saying to him right now.
I'm gonna show you. Look what you're gonna do to me. That's exactly it. All right. Standing there lecturing me, a bird took a hop closer to Kynes' outstretched hands. 2 more hawks drifted down in the sand behind it.
Dude,
there's more just waiting for it.
Honestly, in a abundant, beautiful American like
world,
environment. If I was like sitting on a rolling hill somewhere with plenty of water and a picnic, and a hawk came up, I would already be freaked out, like losing it. Like, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get away from me! You're scary. And then like this dude's dying in the desert, and like 3 hawks and like a bunch more just like showing up. That's freaky. That's
waiting. And again, Pardot in his head, religion and law among our masses must be one and the same. An act of disobedience must be a sin and require religious penalties. This will have a dual benefit of bringing greater obedience and greater bravery. We must not depend so much on the bravery of individuals, you see, as upon the bravery of a whole population.
I didn't like that part.
Why?
Because that's it's just everything that he's been saying is like, all right, you're doing some science stuff, you're getting people to like change a planet and make it like an abundant place. It's cool. Now you're talking about like combining religion and politics, and if we know our history, that never really turns out in any kind of good way, like that never ends up being good.
Would you call that manipulation?
Oh yeah, fully. And we can even see places in the world today where that is like biting the population in the butt, where it's like religion and politics it's totally controlling the masses in whatever that place is.
Yeah, and Pardot wants to control the masses to do this.
Right.
Who does he sound like that we've met so far? What kind of group of people?
B'nai Gesserit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Missionary Protectiva?
Yeah.
How they would go to different worlds and work in different religious things for their own benefit?
Man, I didn't realize that was slimy until I heard the way that he's saying it here. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
All right. And this is where Kynes thinks, where's my population now when I need them most? He summoned what was left of his energy, moves his hands, and the birds now watching them take a step back. And then again, we have his father's voice in his head. As the forces we insert establish themselves, vegetation and animal changes, we need only to control 3% of the energy's surface.
3%?
To tip the entire structure over into our self-sustaining systems. So most of the birds and the other plant life was been slowly introduced.
Right.
But they just need 3% of life in that form will then start to grow and be self-sustained.
Right.
You don't need a lot to do it. Of putting life into the system in this way.
Yeah.
Because animals like us, they're, we'll say hawks and rabbits and mice and everything else, they consume oxygen the same way that we would do. Right. Plants would be the different form, but they produce the carbon dioxide. Right. So we have a good relationship there. Us and plants.
Something like that.
You should buy a plant for your house. You breathe better that way.
Oh, I should. I have no plants, but I just moved in.
You did. Everyone, congratulate Evan on his new place.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I no longer live in a
right.
vehicle, so.
I mean, 2020. Well, 2021 now, as we're currently recording this.
Yeah. It was an RV, people. It was an RV.
It was a nice
My
RV.
family was not living in a Honda Civic.
No.
We have a nice.
They had a bed.
RV.
It was cool.
Yeah.
But now they have a bed in a house. Kynes wonders, why aren't you helping me? Always the same. When I need you the most, you fail me. Yeah, knife to the heart there.
Emo Kynes.
He wanted to turn his head and stare in the direction of his father's voice and stare the old man down, but every muscle removed or refused to answer his demand. What's the...
Moves closer.
It approaches his hand a cautious step at a time, while its companions waited in mock indifference. He stopped only a hop away from his hand. And in that moment, profound clarity filled Kynes' mind. He saw, quite suddenly, a potential for Arrakis that his father had never seen. The possibilities along that different path flooded through him. All right, what do you see? What do you see, Evan? Because the next line...
I mean, yeah. I guess. Wait, what is the next line? They were just gonna have profound.
Says no.
Oh, his dad says no more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero, capital H hero. I don't know if that makes a difference, but when I was reading, I didn't know if he was talking about Paul, right? For your people to fall into the hands of a Muad'Dib, Quraysh kind of guy, or if it was his dad talking to Kynes about Kynes himself in this moment where he was like suddenly positive about the possibilities of him getting out of this situation, something like that, like.
Yeah, I could see that.
So it was one or the other for me.
I could be the hero,
right? Like what your people don't need right now is for you to like be a hero, get out of this and think yourself fantastic. Like.
I think everything is because the big mistake Pardock comes back to is, son, you made the mistake by trusting Paul. If you wouldn't have trusted Paul, you would still be alive, and everything would be fine, and the Fremen would continue. But I think what Kynes sees in this moment of clarity is what Paul could do.
Right. And like, I think that was the whole reason he had that change of attitude when he met Leto in the first place. And when he was talking to Paul in the first place, it was like, oh, wait, they want to terraform too. Like they want life to solve this problem in Arrakis. Yeah. They want life. And so he's dying. He's like, oh no, I'm going to die and everything's going to be terrible and not work out. And then that moment of realization, him going like, but no, wait, it will work out if Paul can make this happen, because what I want is what Paul wants as well. Like this doesn't die with me in the desert right now. Right?
Yeah, because you definitely see a change of attitude in Kynes throughout this whole, since we've met him, because he was he's supposed to kill the Atreides if the Harkonnens don't for the Emperor.
Right.
He's supposed to just rid them off. Everything continues as usual. But his allegiances switched over time. At the dinner party, they were talking about the conservatory, and Jessica says, no, we're going to take that for the people of Arrakis.
Right.
These are the plants we're going to use. And Kynes is like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then there's that typical Atreides sincerity that Paul has.
Right.
That, oh, no. What I can give you in my life. For all of your purposes. And what's going to happen when his people find that Atreides sincerity? That they're going to latch onto.
They're going to flock to it. Yeah, like which is what Jessica was. I think it was Jessica that brought up the Atreides sincerity. That's what she said. Like men flock to it. Men like can't help but give their allegiance to it.
Yeah, they're attracted to it in a way that's almost magnetic.
Yeah.
And I think this is where Kynes sees what Paul can do and like a whole possible situation his father never thought of.
Yeah.
Like, we will accomplish this and so much more.
Right.
Like, I did the right thing. And this is where his father was like, you should have never trusted anybody. But Kynes thinks, reading my mind, Dad. Well, let him. The messages have already been sent to my siege villages. Nothing can stop them. If the Duke's son is alive, they'll find him and protect him as I command. They may discard the woman, his mother, but they'll save the boy.
Which, when I read that, I was like, I don't know if the message got there, because those Fremen sounded like really edgy and like they're gonna just straight up eat Paul and Jessica in the last chapter.
Well, yeah, we're gonna find out when we get there if they survive. That's a part of Paul's dark space. He doesn't know if they're gonna make it or not. The hawk takes again one step closer. It tips its head at the examining flesh. Abruptly, it straightens, stretches its head upward, and in a single screech, leaped into the air.
Squaw!
Banked away overhead with its companion behind it. They've come, Kynes thought. My Fremen have found me. Then he heard the sand rumbling. Every Fremen knew the sound and could distinguish it immediately from the noises of the worms, which again, everybody knows when a worm sounds. Yeah.
It's a heap versus a.
Yeah, okay, cool. I'm glad everyone got that.
I'm great at sound effects, so it's not a big deal.
That's where you get paid for. Somewhere beneath him, the pre-spiced mass had accumulated enough water and organic matter from the Little Makers and had reached a critical stage of wild growth. A gigantic bubble of carbon dioxide was forming deep in the sand, heaving upwards in a tremendous blow with a dust and whirlpool at its center. It would exchange whatever had been formed deep in the sand for whatever lay on the surface. Right? So it's gonna have an explosion go upward.
Okay, so there's an actual. It's not like that's what I was asking you before. It's not like, it doesn't seem like an incendiary like Transformers explosion. Like it's kind of like a little geyser of dust, and then like everything falls into it.
Yeah. You'll be able to see a spice flow from like the surface.
Okay.
Like everyone knows where it is because you're gonna have people flock to it.
Gotcha.
The Fremen are gonna come there. They're pretty far, probably south at this point because they're in Spice Desert. But like anybody who is going to be a spice harvester would then come and lay on top of it and collect all the spice.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's why I was confused earlier, because like as it keeps talking.
Okay, yeah, we'll just keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep going.
The hawks circled overhead, screeching their frustration. They won't get the water.
Right.
They didn't get it. That was a lot of water just sitting there waiting for them, and they couldn't do it. They knew what was happening. Any desert creature would know. I am a desert creature, Kynes thought. You see me, father? I am a desert creature.
He shakes his fist at the sky.
I'm sure if he had enough energy, he would do that. He felt the bubble lift him, felt it break, and the dust whirlpool engulf him, dragging him down into cool darkness. For a moment, the sensation of coolness and the moisture were a blessed relief. Then, as his planet killed him, it occurred to Kynes that his father and all other scientists were wrong. The most persistent principles of the universe were accident and error. Even the hawks could appreciate these facts.
Bam.
Boom. Accidents and error. Like, as much as we want to plan things and put things out to like a plan with math and science and try to get it all perfect, some chaos, the chaos agent will insert itself somewhere in the formula that you don't know,
right,
and disrupt everything.
And not even just in math and science, and just like life, everything, and fixing a flat tire in your car,
right,
and like regular stuff. There's always that, like, I find myself a lot of the time when I'm like really frustrated about something that's happening, it's like, why can't it just be the simplest version of this thing? Like me changing the tire on this car.
Right.
Why do I have to like do all these extra steps, but that's life. Life is just always a little bit more complicated than it seems like it should be.
Or sometimes you benefit off accident. Like you could have never planned that you would get something, but it works in your favor.
Right. It totally works both ways. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's it. That accident, error, the most consistent things in the universe.
Right. But for Kynes, this accident, this error that he's made, or that his father's trying to point out, he's like, yeah, maybe it's like it was a mistake in the sense that I'm now dying, but
shit's gonna happen regardless. We're just gonna go for it.
Right? Could it be the thing that finally allows us to turn Arrakis into a paradise?
And Liet was the leader, so the Fremen are going to be leaderless. Now, there's a vacuum about what may happen. And maybe Paul will fill that. Maybe they'll kill him. Who knows? I know, but you don't.
Right. I mean, from the thickness of what's left in my book, I think I know what's going to happen.
All right.
That would be a lot of appendix.
I also think the quotes at the end kind of give it away of like, oh, what's going to happen?
Right.
Yeah, Arrakis is going to awaken. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
All right. Let's dive into worms.
Okay.
We're going to do this.
Ready.
Right. So what have you... Let's just go over it one more time. What do you think how the worms work in the planet? Before I just give you all the answers.
Well, now I have the datum of Little Makers and their whole relationship with the water and all that kind of stuff. So I'm still piecing things together in my brain. Last time we talked about it on the podcast, I said that spice might be worm poop.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was a big hit, by the way. People love that.
Worm poop. If we make merch, we should just make a worm poop, like a shirt that just says worm poop.
Yeah, worm poop. It'll be viral.
But yeah, I mean, that's all I got.
There's big worms.
There's big worms, and there's apparently little baby tiny ones.
Yeah.
And everything in between.
All right. So this is how worms get the nutrients to survive on a desert planet.
Okay.
We're going to start there. So worm in autotroph, which is an organism that is able to form nutrient organic substances from simple inorganic substances.
Okay.
So they turn inorganic substances into organic substances. They can, so sand.
Sand.
So they eat sand
something,
to fuel their body.
Right.
The worm, the big worm, uses static electricity while moving through the sand to change the substance it eats, which would be sand, from the inorganic substance to the organic substance it needs to survive.
Okay.
So the static friction as it moves through heats up whatever's inside. So there's an internal furnace inside the worm that's taking sand or whatever it eats, could be spice harvesters, right? Inorganic substances like metal.
Right.
It eats it all, and it takes all of those chemical compounds and it makes it into the nutrients, which are gases. They're gases. So the worm needs the gases to survive. The worm has deep flame somewhere in the body cavity. That's why the worms always need to keep moving to keep the static electricity up.
Gotcha. So wait, okay. This may be a silly question, but deep flame, actual fire, or are we is that poetic?
Oh, the poets would call it a deep flame. No one's kind of sliced open a worm at this point to see, but there is heat that comes out of the mouth of the worm. Yeah,
so actual physical.
Right. So the Fremen religious would say there's deep flame.
Gotcha. Okay.
Heating the worm. So the excess heat also aids in driving the synthetic reactions, keeping the nutrients in its gaseous form for absorption. It also vaporizes any stray water that would be around. So it's just hot. Because water once it gets into the worm's system, neutralizes it. It kills the worm. Water kills the worm, the big one. Because if you put the hydrogen and the oxygen in there, like the chemical reaction takes place and it just melts.
Right. Or just cools down that
internal furnace, and yeah. This is from the Dune Encyclopedia, by the way. That's where I'm quoting this all from.
Okay.
Certainly, it's well known that much of the oxygen on Arrakis comes from the sandworm. The oxygen is the excess gas that's not used in the system for the survival of the worm.
Right.
So that is how you have the nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide environment perfect for humans.
Right.
So the worm is, say, like half plant, half animal.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking for in my book. He said it somewhere, those half plant, little blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So the worms are somewhere in between plant and animal.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Right. So like a plant uses photosynthesis,
yeah,
right, to create nutrients along with carbon dioxide. You have the worm just takes inorganic material, heats it up, and it creates these gases which continue to fuel the worm and keep it alive.
Yeah.
And then the excess of that becomes the air, if we were on Arrakis, that we would breathe.
Right.
So that's the gap in the system.
Okay. Where does the carbon dioxide go?
What do you mean?
Are they also consuming carbon dioxide? Because like the cycle, as we said before, between us humans and plants is we expel carbon dioxide, the plants take it, turn it into oxygen, we breathe in the oxygen, and the cycle continues.
Right.
Where's the carbon dioxide going?
The ones that we would breathe out.
Yeah.
Probably just back into the worm, and it would just go through the system.
Okay. So it plays some kind of part with the worm.
Okay. The worm could exist without us.
Oh. Okay.
It doesn't need humans. All it needs is sand.
Right.
Well, all it got to be around water.
Right.
The water would kill it.
Okay, so terraforming Arrakis then would be bad news for the worm.
Correct.
Who is the
one?
They're the ones in charge of Arrakis.
Yes, from an ecological perspective, 100%. Also, the fun fact: the worms aren't native to Arrakis.
Do we find that out in the book? Because that would be like.
Find that's it's just a offhand fact that means nothing to the story. That the way the life cycle of the worm works, it terraforms the planet for its own uses, just like humans would do in this case. So you're trying to compete which life form is the top life form. The worms or the humans?
Right.
Who has more control over the planet to sustain life? And is there a way that we can work together? Because as we know, the humans love spice.
Right.
Now, where does the spice come from? Evan looks at me blankly. All right. So the spice comes, so the pre-spice mass, right, is you have these little makers that come and they find water. Yes. And they crystallize around the water, and they just bring more water into the system. And they form like a shell around it. And the little makers are tiny worms.
Yes. What are we talking about? Like the size of my arm?
No, we're talking like think like frogs. You have full-grown frogs, and then you have the tadpoles.
Okay.
So little makers are single-celled organisms.
Oh, okay.
That's pure goal in life is to attract water. They will pull water from the system.
Wow. Okay.
Because big worms can't be around water, so they're taking the water out of the system and they're cocooning around it. All these little makers, and they're bringing all the water in there, and there's a chemical reaction that takes place that the little makers are putting into the water to create this giant bubble.
Right.
And this is the pre-spice mass. When it gets so big, it explodes everywhere. And the moment it hits oxygen, it oxidizes and it becomes spice.
Okay. So the spice is coming from the water?
And the worm together.
Oh. It's not worm poop.
No, unfortunately, it's not. But it is integral to the worm system. And so that's where you get the spice from. But everybody just thinks spice just pops up randomly. No one goes to look, where's the spice come from?
Right.
What chemicals are missed in this closed loop system to make, and that's where Pardot was saying, I knew they were there long before we saw them.
Gotcha.
And how it all worked out. So how does a little maker become a...
That, I just figured out what a little maker actually is.
All right.
2 seconds ago. So I've not had the time to process that.
So a little maker, right, is the single cell organism.
Yeah.
A bunch of them are going to come together and crystallize around this water as they pull in water from everywhere until it brings it to a certain point and explodes. All right. The worms in this massive explosion, half of these little makers, which are called sand trout later on, die.
Yeah.
They just don't make it. Evolution, just kills them off. The ones that survive this traumatic event grew together for protection, which makes, and that over the course of 1,000 years, will make the first ring of a worm and a second layer of the worm. So it's the teeth, and then it's the sexual organs, according to the Dune Encyclopedia, which is never actually referenced in the actual book, so we'll just take it from there. The first 2 rings, and then they grow rings as they continue to grow, the bigger they get.
Gotcha.
And so that is how you form a new worm, is the little makers explode, and then you have this, takes a while, but then you grow into the next one.
Okay. So the creation of spice is just a part of the creation of the worms themselves.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes. Most juvenile worms are female, and it's unknown how they become male. So technically, there are female and male worms. According to the Dune Encyclopedia, what a female worm does is it burrows itself in the ground and makes a thumping sound to attract the male worm, which is where we get thumpers from. Right. They make that boom, 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 boom. The worms that are called are coming because there's movement, so they're just going to eat anything. Right. But it's probably just the sexual drive, the boom, boom, boom. They're going to go find a female somewhere. Just Right. The male worm eats the female. Ooh. The egg case, which was inside a spice fiber, gets fertilized, and the male worm then spews out the egg case, right, back to where it is. It just vomits it out.
Cool.
The egg case bursts when it releases thousands of little makers. And those little makers then spread out to find water and bring it back where this is, making the pre-spice mass. Until it gets to the point where it's collected enough water and blows up to the surface, oxidizes with the air, and creates spice. And every time there's a spice blow, a worm comes. Mm-hmm. Because why? What calls a worm?
Noise.
Yeah. Movement. So anytime there's movement, a worm comes. So a lot of people think that worms eat the spice, but they don't.
Right.
They just eat everything. Right. If there's movement, they eat it. So the goal is, can you get something in there to harvest the spices for as long as you can until a worm comes, then you boop, pop up.
Right.
And the worm always comes.
Right.
Does that make sense now when he's talking about little makers and what's under you and how the system all works?
Yes. Yeah, it makes a lot more sense now.
I won't ask you to repeat it back to me, though. because that's probably a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
I definitely won't do that to you. But yes, the worms are known as Shai-Hulud to the Fremen people. It means old man eternity, right? They don't the worms don't understand how all the intricacies that I just explained to you of how it all works. Like Pardot knew that, Kynes knew some of that. It's more of just a religious thing for the Fremen, right there, because the worms are they're a linchpin key animal in the ecosystem. Without it, everything dies.
Right.
So, and plus they produce spice, which is awesome and infects everything. And is definitely part of the Fremen religious culture.
Right.
We're at an hour 15, so I'm gonna do this real fast.
Wow. Okay, it's a long one.
There was this one, as Amanda says, this chapter is deep. It's really deep.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening, and if you don't, when you first read it, I thought it was cool. I didn't understand it. None of this stuff actually really matters in the story. It's kind of awkward, but it's fun to see the world building of what Frank Herbert put this. He drew out the whole system and then wrote a framework around all of it. Yeah. There's no guessing about how the pieces work in Frank's mind. He knows how everything works in the system. And I'm going to show you right now what he was kind of how he put this all together. So in the encyclopedia, there is pulling it up right now. A hymn to Shai-Hulud.
Ooh.
And this hymn, there we go, is pulled directly from Job 41 for the most part.
No way.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of fun. So I'm sharing on the screen now. Let's see if it pops up. Oh, let's do that. Chrome has lost permission. Oh, I don't know. Come on. I don't know if I can do this. I really want to do it. We pull up on the big screen here. That's in front of Evan and I.
Yep.
I'll post on Twitter. Twitter at Reading Dune. The hymn to Shai-Hulud. All right, so it's going to go verse by verse and see if you can find any key distinctions, Evan, of how similar they are. So Job 41 is talking about the Leviathan. And this is in the King James Version.
Eye roll.
So in hymn to Shai-Hulud, it says, "Canst thou lasso him by the horns, or wilt thou rather harpoon him?" In Job in the King James Version, "Canst thou put a hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn?" In the hymn to Shai-Hulud, "Will he let thee ride upon his back? Wilt thou take him for thy bearer forever? Wilt thou play with him as with a sound trout, or wilt thou present thy maidens to him?" And as we continue with this, it's almost, there's just slight changes in Job 41 that you can see you see Frank Herbert kind of pull from as he's making this religion.
But it's still very similar. Like you can see the similarities very clearly between Job and the hymn to Shai-Hulud. Like it's obvious even just without reading the words that they're like parallels. You know what I mean?
Like directly parallels. Right. Like verse 14, "Who dare enters the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round about." And we met a worm teeth. They're not fun.
Right.
Verse 14 in King James, "Who can open the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round about." It's almost direct word for word.
For sure.
And in the very end, it says, upon Dune there is not his like, for he maketh the water of life. He is chief in the ways of God. He is Shai Hulud, the old father eternity. So there is, and maybe this is missionary protectiva, like,
Right.
because we know Job in the Orange Catholic Bible was like left in there because it's just a weird story as is.
Right.
But you can definitely see the Fremen stamp upon it.
Yeah.
Which we're going to see also is going to continue out because in the Liet-Kynes Awakening, there's going to be a new Fremen stamp on everything.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense that Job would end up being an important piece of literature for the Fremen, yes, but like also just for that concept of the OC Bible in the first place.
Yeah.
Job being one of the oldest stories, not just like in the Bible, like one of the oldest stories thrown around in human history in the first place, you know, and even in other outside of the Jewish ancient Hebrew culture.
Yeah, ancient Near East culture. And Trish says that Frank Herbert pulled from many religions.
Oh yeah, it's very, very obvious that he's doing that.
Yeah, and I think he's definitely putting he's talking about how we use religion and politics to manipulate people and how we use it and how dangerous is it.
Right.
What are the dangers when we use some of these things in tandem?
Right.
And
but he dare I say, he's also saying that there is some value in them as well, because he's talking about it was something that I thought a lot about when they were still talking about the B'nai Gesserit a lot, in the beginning of the book, where they're saying, you know, like the Reverend Mother is like, he might be this
the savior.
He might be that thing, but that thing is something that we've just been teaching these people to like be able to manipulate and control them. But like here, Paul is becoming this
something else,
fictional thing, as far as everybody else knows.
Yeah,
he's becoming the actual embodiment of this big spiritual Messiah character, and I can only imagine like Kynes and the B'nai Gesserit and Jessica all watching this happen and being like, "Oh shoot, this is real!" Like,
right?
Wait, is it actually happening? Wait, hold on, you know. And so there's this cool play between like science and religion, which is like something we've talked about it a lot. We care deeply about,
right? Yeah, spirituality and how spirituality and science and the mix together. And I think I'll end with this, which is really funny as we move into the next chapter. The next quote for the next chapter talks about how prophecy works and how did Muad'Dib use prophecy? Was it always prophecy, or did he make certain things happen on certain lines when he saw availabilities?
Yeah.
And as with the stories of this Lisan al-Gaib, the voice from the outer world, what would he do? Is Paul fulfilling that? Or is he just playing into the system that he sees weaknesses and paths, which also happen to be that? Is he making prophecy happen, or is the prophecy foretelling him? We won't know.
Or it's both and.
Maybe it's both. And with that, we'll leave you for the day. Thank you for reading Dune with us. It's always a pleasure. Remember to stay spicy. Oh yeah. Make sure you send us your favorite moments in Dune. Do that. Take a video of yourself. Send us an audio recording. Email us at readingdune@gmail.com. We will put it on the show. That would be awesome. Hit us up on Twitter. And always remember to please stay spicy.
Stay spicy, everyone.
Peace.